Welcome to the Cyber Kumite. I'm Tim Wainwright, and this is Chris Salerno. With us today is Mick Baccio on the subject of election security. Today's Kumite is brought to you by Duo Cyber Lingo. Learn to talk the talk on all the silly security speak. Ideal for lawyers, lawmakers, and screenwriters.
All right. Mick, thanks for joining us today. You were the CISO of Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign. I think you were the first such of these CISOs to actually do that for a presidential campaign. There might have been somebody else, but I don't know who that is. How did you get that job?
So it was well, first, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I got a call in about June of 2019, June of last year. And it was from some folks in the campaign, and they were, hey, we want to bring on a CISO. Like we're cybersecurity, we're gonna lean into it, and we got your name. And I think I know who gave their name, but
you want to make any wild accusations now? No.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think I know who it is, but like anyway, they
you know who you are.
They got my name, and you know, at first I said no, just because when you look at the nature of campaigns, one, it's a very temporal thing. Like either you win or you don't have a job. And that could happen at any point along the way. And just the nature of putting something in place that had never been there, the challenges that come with that. And at first I said no. And then I talked to some friends of mine, and a lot of them kind of said the same thing where, you know, this is a really, really unique experience that, you know, this job might only ever come along every 4 years. And if 4 years from now, are you going to get that call?
Yeah.
And that was something that really stuck with me, and just the challenge, just, you know, the unique opportunity was something I really wanted to take advantage of. And I started right after the 4th of July last year. I remember some friend of mine, Ryan Kovar, we went out to Colorado for like a long weekend before the 4th of July and just hung out on top of a mountain and just, okay, you're gonna take this vacation because you're not going to have another day off as long as you're working for this campaign. So, you know, let's just kind of hang out and do this. And it was a fantastic time, and it was a great ride. It's really, really, campaigns are a unique beast.
Well, we want to hear more about it here through you know, some of the questions we've got for you. It sounds like a mountaintop experience to begin, and it's funny, you're the most qualified. I guess, you know, assuming that there haven't been other campaign CISOs, which we don't think so, right? It actually makes you the most qualified candidate on the planet. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. As far as I know, at the time I was the only, I was the first one in the history of presidential elections, which I think back on it, and like, it's really, really bonkers. Like, oh my God, I'm like the only one. And then you think a little bit longer, like, wow, I'm the only one. And just that shift of mentality of like, there should be more people doing this. Yeah. And I you know, Chris just got brought on to the Biden campaign. So I think that's a great step. And I hope we see more of that across party lines, where every campaign has a CISO at the presidential level and even below that.
Well, I agree. And the good news is I didn't see anything publicly about any incidents that happened on Pete's campaign. So
yeah,
good job.
Good job.
But, you know, don't make the paper, right? That's like the rule of security is don't make the paper.
Exactly. So a little bit then, you know, kind of getting into the core of the topic around election security. What are the core issues there, and what are the things that are just some of those misconceptions that we hear about, and it's like, well, that's not really part of this?
I think the big thing is when you hear like election hacking or election security, everything gets lumped into one big, everything is election hacking. And when you kind of peel back that onion a little bit, it is a little complicated, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I kind of made it easy. And I broke it into 3 buckets to help me remember. You know, just I think you have one bucket where it's your, whether you call it influence operations or discourse manipulation, whatever that is, you know, that's one separate thing. Then you have the election systems themselves, what the EAC is responsible for, the administrations of the elections, the hardware, the systems administration on the back end. And then the third bucket is the actual campaign cybersecurity. And that's kind of the wheelhouse that I lived in. And every one of those has its own unique problems that come with it. So my thing was, focus on what I can, and cybersecurity is my wheelhouse. It's my jam. I can do this. I don't know how to stop influence operations other than an educated populace, so I'll let somebody else try and tackle that. And the election, administration themselves, the EAC is doing, the best job they can with the resources they have, and they're getting better. But it's just, they're all really, really big beasts to tackle.
So Mick, what's included in that third bucket that you focused on, the campaign security? Is this about, local websites security? Is it about communication security, travel? Like what were the parts of that?
Rolling security on a campaign, I think, is one, it's super unique. I guess I put it as close as I could to a startup, where you're kind of building that plane as it's in the air. I started in July. The campaign, I believe they officially announced in April. So from April to July, just the staff growth was exponential and continued to be that way. That's what you want in a campaign. So rolling security on something like that is just like a startup where, hey, what are the core things I need to protect? And what can I do to do that? On a campaign, the big thing is every dollar you spend on security is a dollar you don't spend on votes. And I get it. That's just the nature of campaigns. So find me something secure, scalable, and as close to free as possible. I think when you look at campaigns, there is a department. There's a bunch of departments in a campaign, like any other organization. Your fundraising, your finance, your organizing, media, policy teams. These are all different departments, and just like any organization, they have a security story that can be told. And I think your job as the CISO is to find that story and tell it.
So did you find that it was hard to engage with them? Especially because they're not used to it. And I imagine that some of these people are volunteers. Some of these people are full-time paid and part of the campaign that way. Did you find that some of them were like, who is this guy and why is he asking me questions? Or as you said in the beginning, did the whole organization really kind of lean into this idea?
The organization really leaned into it. And I think I was in a uniquely qualified position to say, hey, I'm Mick. I ran a threat intelligence team at the White House before I came over here, over the 2016 election. So I'm uniquely qualified to keep you as secure as possible. And I think having those credentials really helped me and the campaign, the staff themselves. And I think it's the same with a lot of folks. Everyone wants to be secure. Everyone wants, that security. When after you find everything that happened in 2016, the compromise is there, no one wants to be that next person. So I'll do it, but I want you to explain the why behind it. Mm-hmm. And I think, it goes back to insecurity, being able to communicate effectively to a non-technical audience. I think that is something that paid off in spades. I think they want to be secure and they were on board. It's just why, what's this get me? And, what's the level of effort involved?
Yeah. So what type of questions did they have for you? So once you engage them, they understand, you've got creds, you understand the space. What were some of the types of things you were able to help them with?
I think the big thing is personal hygiene. Kind of instilling that in people at the level that you needed for a personal threat model. When you look back at the 2016 election, you look at John Podetz's email, all the DC leaks, all the things that were compromised, those were on personal email accounts. So extending the same security posture, maybe a lesser extent, depending on, your what's okay for you. Extending that into your personal life, I think, is kind of crucial, not just for a campaign staffer, but really for anyone now.
Was it tough to convince people to stop using personal accounts for the campaign business, or is it just something?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I think, the big thing was so when I first started, I gave a brief to a lot of folks there. Hey, I'm Mick. This is my background. This is what the GRU is, this is what happened in 2016. And then, we did the basic, the safe sex talk, the OPSEC, InfoSec, ComSec, and why all of these things are important and what could go wrong if, we don't exercise them. And I think it's the same thing you do when you roll security at any organization.
So were you just a one-man army for this? You had to take this on by yourself, or did you have anybody helping out? Did you have interns, volunteers, anything like that?
So a bunch of volunteers, a bunch of help, some staff. But I think the biggest help was just the support and really the buy-in of all the staffers on the campaign. I think, because they bought into the idea of security, it helped things a lot.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the other areas, even if they weren't your core focus. You kind of had to be planning ahead for this stuff. We didn't know how far Mayor Pete was going to go in the race, and it could have been all the way when you joined, and so you had to be thinking about some of the other buckets there. I was kind of reading up more on the topic. I've always found this pretty interesting. It's been pretty hot in the news for a while now too, and I think it was at Black Hat 2018 that Mara Tom spoke, and she's got a legal background, but a lot of security credibility too. Yeah. I don't know her myself. I think she's cool. So it's cool that you know her. And she was clarifying the idea of influence versus interference, which you hinted at in the beginning. And she said, what the Russians did was the former, not the latter. So it was influence, not interference. How did that influence the way that you were thinking about having to deal with that eventually? Did you have some plans or thinking about that? Or is that an example of something that, the campaign staffers were asking you about, like, hey, what are we going to do here?
I think, and what Mara spoke about, I agree. I think Thomas Rid said something similar recently where, we know that there was an operation that, whether it was propaganda, IO discourse, what do you want to call it? There was something that happened, right? And we've confirmed that. But did that lead to a singular person changing their vote? And quantifying that, I don't know if you can do that. I think there's a lot of smart folks trying to crack that egg. But, it's measurability. I think, the responses for the other two buckets that I mentioned, the things that weren't in my control, I think it's you have same, I'm sure you guys do the same thing, your tabletop exercises. These are the critical, invaluable, like basic security, like if this happens, what do we do? And you have your specific scenarios, but it kind of falls into, again, like some smaller categories. This statement came out and it wasn't us. This video got released and it was doctored audio or doctored footage and it wasn't us. What is our statement going to be? Here are the players we need for our response, security, comms, legal, get all the people in the room. Here's what we're going to do if this happens. And that, I think, is invaluable, as well as relationships with the folks at the places where this would happen.
That's great. I mean, the connection with tabletops is just right on. And I think
Absolutely.
a lot of organizations in private sector will do. It depends on the industry they're in. Sometimes they might do these things quarterly, semi-annual, and sometimes just annually. Mm-hmm. And from what you're saying, as I'm thinking out loud, it just seems like tabletops would be the thing that you're doing very often. Like you've got a big playbook of different scenarios,
right?
And how you handle each one. You really do want to run it through, and I would think those stakeholders would be pretty engaged.
Right, and you keep that Rolodex, or same thing that if you had an incident at your business. Here are the folks that I need to get on the line immediately and make sure we're all on the same page. And having that beforehand, instead of trying to get left of boom, trying to get as far left as you can, just have that plan ready in case you have the plan ready in the hope that you never need it.
Yeah, and on the same line of thinking between influence and interference, I saw a quote from Todd Beardsley, who's been at Rapid7 for a long time. Again, don't know him, just a cool guy, director of research there. And one of the things that he said was just rumors of hacking are enough to throw into chaos and cause doubt. And I think that kind of it has to do with this influence versus interference, but it also kind of gets to the idea of, can the voting machines be hacked? Is it likely? And there's an HBO documentary, very, very heavily guided by Harry Hursty. It was a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if you've watched this one yet. And the entire emphasis of election security in that was entirely about the voting devices. Knowing you didn't have to deal with it directly, but again, thinking ahead and having your head in the space for the duration of the campaign. What do you think about that risk? And before you answer that question, I've got to go to our sponsor again real quick. Sorry, Mick. These guys pay us a lot of money. and let us do the podcast every week. Another message from our sponsor: don't want to RTFM to get your CISSP? 10 minutes of Duo cyber lingo per day will help you fake it till you make it in the cyber biz. Sorry, Mick, got to do that. The question was, if you've seen the documentary, you probably have some thoughts on it, but if not, how are you starting to think ahead on the hackability of voting devices, and really how, what's the real impact of that risk to our upcoming election?
I remember watching it when it came out, but that was a few months ago, and time, so like, I thought it was fantastic. And again, like that's Harry's bucket, like the hacking the voting machines themselves.
Yeah, he's been doing it since he was a kid or something.
Yeah. And Maggie McAlpine, who I just met like digitally recently, and amazing work. I think when you look at that, it falls in the bucket I can't control, that this is not my wheelhouse. There's nothing I can really do about it. And I know there's a lot of folks working on it, and the EAC, in my opinion, I just, the lack of a standard.
Yeah.
We all have to follow, whether it's PCI, NIST, FISMA, like you name a compliance framework, I got to follow it. And I think establishing that with voting machines that won't be grandfathered in, having that baseline security, I think I would just like to see that happen. But I know there's a lot of smart folks tackling the issue, and that is a problem set that is just as huge as campaigns or as IO. So when you look at election security, yeah, it's like a three-headed monster.
But I think some of the discussion around it too is what's the likelihood of a widespread device hacking event, and that might be a moot question, because if you're only targeting key counties, and they're known, and they're using known vulnerable machines, and small businesses, small kind of local IT businesses are the ones that are kind of set it up and administering these things, it's starting to sound like a recipe for something that that actually could happen. But the question is, and even going back to some of Mara's thinking around it, is who wants to get caught doing that? It might be easier to just influence an election by causing the fear. Like maybe the bad guys, whoever they are, don't even want to do the hacking. Maybe they can do the damage just by getting the idea across, or introducing the rumor, like Todd had said, that maybe something happened.
Any other thought?
I think when you look at it, the voting machines themselves, there is a huge, it could happen, right? It's within the realm of possibility. But then you start looking at it like a supply chain threat, where not the voting machines themselves, but the systems they're connected to, like all the ones that tabulate the actual votes and relay them, or the city infrastructures that are normally interconnected with the voter database. It's all kind of shoestring together. And if any part of it fails, it's a recipe for disaster. And yeah, that's one of the things that'll keep everyone up late at night if you really, really think about it. And smart folks are tackling it, and I hope to see a long-term solution. But between now and November,
and I think there's another part to this that's interesting. Even if someone is able to pull all that off, I think a lot of people are talking in the sense that, of course, it will be detected. Well, that's just not the case. Knowing what we know about computer systems and how many penetration test style things and red team style exercises we do, how often is detection actually part of this? And I think that's the part that concerns me more than anything, is that if it were done, would we know? I think a lot of this assumes that we would figure out eventually that these votes were messed with, and I just don't know that that's the case.
How about this, Chris? Though, how about this? If you're trying to throw the election for a loop, and the most effective way is to throw everything into doubt, and you're a nation state actor that wants to throw the election into doubt, probably the best thing you can do is to do a hack, make it look like a different nation state did it, but actually make it detected, and only do one, because you probably only need one really egregious one to throw the whole system into doubt. Nothing's trusted at that point. You actually don't even need to do the widespread hack. You maybe don't even need to target a specific community. If you get one done and it's obvious, then have you done enough damage?
Yeah.
I think what we learned in 2016 and what we've seen from a lot of compromises, that it's not really a large technical lift in a lot of cases, right? Like, what was it back in, like, Office Monkeys way back in the day? It was just like a video of dancing monkeys and popped everybody. it's a low lift. And I think when you look at this election specifically, there's a lot of uncertainty because of 2020, because of the coronavirus, there is going to be a huge absentee mail-in, what do you want to call it, vote that won't be tabulated by election night. So you're going to have about 3 days, a week, maybe, I don't know how long, but there is going to be a delay, unless it's some kind of blowout, where we don't know who won that election. And that, I think, that uncertainty, that pocket of time to draw any kind of doubt that's what I fear, that window of time.
I agree. I just read an article, it was either yesterday or the day before, we need to start calling it election week instead of calling it election night for this year because of what you're saying. And that casts a lot of doubt, because the more time you add to any event like that, the more time there is to, have a perceived, have people perceive that something went wrong and call into doubt. So that's pretty interesting. Mick, how you're the first CISO we know of that's been involved here. How do we get more people involved into these types of things with campaigns or with election security? Is it volunteering? Is it just kind of understanding what goes into this? Is there a way to get more people involved here?
Get involved. Like, the only way to get involved is to get involved. I don't know how else to. So there are groups out there, like you mentioned, Hari, and all the folks at the Voting Village, reach out to them. They would love to help. Write your congressman, write your senator, write your local officials, get involved with them. So I was the CISO in a presidential campaign, and the budget on a presidential campaign is what you expect it to be if you're running for president. But if I'm running for Congress, if I'm running for Senate, if I'm running at a state level, I might not have those same resources to bring a CISO on board. Get involved locally in your political system. Like, if your local candidate doesn't have a cyber, doesn't have two-factor, hey, look, I dig your policies. Let's work together. Let me be volunteer. Get involved in voting. Everyone has their different threat models and threat tolerances. Go volunteer at a polling place if that fits inside your threat model. Encourage other people to vote absentee if they're able to this November and don't feel safe going to a polling place. A lot of disinformation is out there, and I think there's just educated populace is the way to fix it. And again, I think we get better by working together. And I think when you look, not just election security, but just security in general, security gets better if we all work together and make it better. And I think campaigns and our electoral process, that's no different. I think secure elections are more important to our future than anything else. And I hope to see the enthusiasm continue past this November and into the future.
That's awesome, Mick. And I'm wondering if my local voting facility will let me go in there and super glue all the USB ports. So if you watch the documentary, that's one of the ways it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Doing that type of takeover. Well, Mick, this has been really insightful. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm Tim Wainwright, and I'm reminding you again that I taught Chris Salerno everything he knows.
And I'm Chris Salerno, and I guess that means if Tim ever runs for office, I'll know how to beat him.
Ooh.
Well, Tim does run for office. I'll come do security. Thanks for having me, Mick Baccio. No hack me on Twitter.
Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Mick.